you so much. It's our pleasure to join you tonight. And in fact, while we were listening sa conversation kanina, sabi ko, ang gagaling naman ng mga tao dito sa call na to. Sabi ko, ano pa ba ituturo namin? You're such wonderful with your conversation, and it goes to show the level of commitment that you have for your family, and also your understanding of what is right, what is good, and what can be used in the family in the context of communication.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. It's truly a pleasure for us to listen in to you, your conversation. So even when we had our cameras off earlier, so narinig namin yung mga usapan nyo about UP, where we also bike, by the way. And I was just there earlier kasi bonfire ngayon sa UP. So because nanalo kami after 36 years ng championship, di ba? So I mean for the people here in the call, UP fight tayo. Ayun, may nagsabi na UP fight. So hindi ko na naabutan yung pagsinde ng bonfire because we had to hurry home because of this, but I'm not blaming you for for getting in the way of our championship. Hanggang mamayang gabi pa naman, pwede pang humabol. So anyway, so without much ado, we'd like to start our talk. But before that, I noted down a lot of the things that was mentioned earlier. For example, that there seems to be a lot of intergenerational issues that I heard earlier from what you have mentioned. And na this discipline talaga in this generation is very, very different. Ang sabi nga ng asawa ko before, titingin lang daw yung tatay niya sa kanya, tatahimik na daw sila sa buong table. So he tried it with our eldest daughter, who is now 27. You're going to see her in a bit. So I think when she was 5, tinitigan niya ng mabuti yung daughter namin. Tapos sabi ng daughter namin, "Yes, Dad, what?" So it totally did not work, and parang we at that time we were also like caught flat-footed, not really knowing what to do, and of course taking care of older parents. I also went through that, but well, unfortunately, right now both of my parents have also passed away, and see Herald, but you have. But there is really a time in your life. But what I love most about what I heard earlier was, I'm not sure if it was Mr. Frankie that mentioned this, that mutual respect. Like, how will your kids respect you if you don't respect them? And I really love that, because that's essentially what mutual respect is.
And we would like to begin, kasi ang dami ng magandang conversation kanina. In fact, konti na lang, just ahead of the discussion. According to studies, parenting is 80% modeling. So tamang-tama si Tito Frankie, talagang we model before our children what is right, what is acceptable, and at the same time, what should be non-negotiable. This is our family. Medyo konting adjustment lang sa introduction. May maraming highs and lows, but it's wonderful. And my wife will introduce to you our 4 beautiful children.
Yeah, so as mentioned, this is Herald and myself when we celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary. Yeah, so my oldest daughter, she's on the extreme right. She's Misha. She is now married. At that time, she wasn't married yet, but she's married to an American Italian, and they're living in Germany. Ang habang kwento, no? And then they met in China. So
and she speaks Mandarin.
And she also speaks. So she I think that God, well, not think, but I know that God has been very, very faithful to that daughter of mine, all of my children naman. But because she, speaking of communication, no, so that daughter of mine, she actually was diagnosed with dyslexia early on. And we had a difficulty, well, we had to look for a school for her, and then we let her dream big, and she really wanted to study abroad. And ano na lang talaga, she may not be the bright, she knows she's at that time hindi talaga niya ma-perfect yung mga scores niya. She did so badly sa mga exams. Pero for one thing that we really love about her is ang tiyaga niya. Matyaga siya talagang mag-aral. So she more than made up for that. She got a 90% scholarship to study in the US. And after that, she worked in China where she met her future husband. And then she also got into a university in Germany later on to pursue her master's degree. So siguro for those of you here who have children who may be having difficulty, just hang in there, because I mean, grades are not everything. Parang for her it was yeah. Okay, so sabi ng asawa ko, siguro namimiss ko lang talaga. I haven't seen her for a while.
Okay. Sige.
Tapos si Miggy naman, si Miggy is also taga UP, so he graduated from sports science. He was with the UP Pep Squad, but now he's about to pursue medicine, probably in the next sem, so he decided to do that. Si Michaela, the one beside me, she is right now 4th year in university, and she's in a 6-year program where you graduate with your master's in the University of Asia and the Pacific. So we let her pursue that. And si Nicole, our latest one, she is a senior. I mean, she's in high school. So we also have multi-generations. And just because we're giving this talk on communication, just giving a caveat that we're not perfect communicators at all. I don't think anyone is, but at least we know the rules. Kind of, diba?
Okay, so let's proceed. So we would like to ask you, everyone who's here, whether you are a married couple or singles or lolo, lola, how would you describe healthy marital communication, or maybe in the family? What elements should be present, no? Kung mamaya, kung may time tayo, sa chat natin, we'll take the time to read it para maging mas interactive. Kasi minsan kung nasa Zoom tayo, para ba nagkasalita lang yung speaker, and we would like to make sure that everyone is engaging each other. And I'm sure there's a wealth of knowledge sa grupong ito. So, mamaya will take the time to read it. So, kung may mga thoughts kayo, kung ano ba yung mga healthy marital or family, healthy communication in the family, ano yung mga elemento that should be present? You can use pictures, you can use words, you can use whatever. Iba nga sabi nila, yung isang healthy daw na family communication, parang kare-kare na iba-ibang sangkap, pero pag pinagsama at may bagoong pa, naku, napakasarap. So siguro, bahala na kayo, pero sa inyo, ano yung mga elements na dapat ito ay present? Well, in a world na napaka tindi ng communication, information ngayon ng mga gadgets natin, yung mga cellphones natin ngayon, mas powerful pa sa mga computers na 20 years ago. Talaga, ang dami na apps for communication, chat, messaging, whatever. And yet it seems na marami pa rin yung miscommunication. I'm sure all of us can relate to this na sinasabi nung asawa, I can't understand my wife, or vice versa, or hindi ko maintindihan ng anak ko. Para bang yung communication ay lagi may mga challenges tayong kinakaharap.
Or if anything, sometimes I'm sure you have heard of families gathered around the table, but they're not talking because everyone is on their gadget, diba? And I mean, just today, just to call my daughter from the 2nd floor of the house, I had to call her through Messenger. Kasi mas madali yun, diba? Then going up the stairs, calling her. So I messengered her and I said, it's time for dinner. But also, one of the rules that we have in our family is that, and even when their cousins are here, we try to apply that, is that when we're eating dinner together at the table, it's phones down. So that's why we force each other to talk to one another. And actually, one time we were stranded actually in Cebu during the
Odette.
Typhoon Odette. And as in, that's a totally different story, and that will probably take the entire day, yung faithfulness ni Lord sa amin doon. But during that time, needless to say, walang signal ang mobile phone, walang internet, no nothing. And my kids all realized that, oh my gosh, they started to see the people around them and create stories about the other residents. And they said, oh my gosh, Mom, this is literally life, parang face-to-face social media. Kasi napanood na nila yung couple sa tabi na nag-aaway. Tapos, alam mo yun, yung parang sa Facebook feed mo na nag-aaway yung mga tao sa feed mo. Pero ito daw, face-to-face nakikita mo yung mga tao. So, media has really changed our lives, but sometimes it's just really great to unplug every now and then.
Okay. So we have a number of definitions regarding open communication, which is our topic, no? One of which is, in healthy and loving marriages and families, couples talk freely, openly, and feel that they are safe when they share their most private thoughts. No? Siguro yung word dyan, yung safe, na you feel safe, na feeling mo na you can freely open up kung anong nasa heart mo.
Yeah, and secondly, healthy families comfortably voice their worries, their pains, and feelings when difficulties arise, and express gratitude when things are good. And also in open communication, one feels that one is listened to without judgment, and that the family is safe. And I know that maybe it's not all the time that we will have space in our family that feels safe. And it's not all the time that we can voice our worries, but at least it has to be 80% of the time, because no family, again, is perfect. And sometimes you will feel judged about your families, by your own families, and we may not always be a safe space. And you will know this especially if you have teenagers in the house and you're trying so hard. And we know this because we've gone through teenager number 3, now going on teenager number 4. So they come around eventually, but during the time that they're in their rebellious teens, you're really going to ask yourself, am I really creating a safe space for them? And, just love them without judgment, which is easier said than done. But I believe that all the families here, from what I heard from the conversation earlier, are doing great.
Okay. In James chapter 1, verses 19 to 21 says, my beloved brothers, and of course, kasama dyan yung mga sisters, understand this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. For a man's anger does not bring about righteousness that God desires. Therefore, get rid of all moral filth and every expression of evil, and humbly accept the word planted in you, which can save your souls. Well, this is given in the context of the church, and I believe that this can also be applied in the context of the family. Kasi sometimes or often, we do the opposite.
Exactly.
Yung kabaliktaran na slow to anger, dapat bisa mabilis tayong magalit. And lahat tayo guilty every now and then. Well, because of the limited time that we have, we would like to focus sa mga Q&A kasi we have more time para sa Q&A mamaya. And we would like to maximize yung Q&A na yon. And just in case, may mga tanong na ito it's very personal, then siguro you can just communicate na ito ay confidential and we can actually address it.
Okay, so one of the first keys to really having good communication at home is the willingness to be vulnerable. One of the best speakers that I've heard on this is Brené Brown. And if you have not heard her speak, and if you listen to TED Talks, TED, and if you search Brené Brown, I highly recommend listening to her. And this is what she said, that vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome, because vulnerability is not weakness, but it's our greatest measure of courage. And she goes on to say there, somewhere in her speech, that vulnerability may be the seat of shame, but it's actually like what brings us into love and acceptance eventually. And if you know yung story namin ni Herald, it took a lot because we almost separated at a certain point in our marriage, and I think it took both of I think we finally healed when both of us was willing to be vulnerable, and it was not easy. And until now, we still find, you know, as you grow older, you're like, you change. And someone also mentioned at the start na parang there is a need for alignment. I'm not sure if that was si Clem and Roe Velasco, or I'm not sure. Sorry if I mentioning but someone mentioned that there's a need for alignment, and indeed, as you grow older as a couple, and even when you're still looking for someone, you will find that the person you married, even though they may be the same, eventually you all change, and you will have to change along with the changes of your husband or your wife. And eventually you will have to calibrate, because if not, you will both have changed so much in the opposite direction. And si Harold and myself, we have what we call our calibration dates, because sometimes so many things are happening in my life and so many things are happening in his life. I forgot to introduce myself earlier. I'm not your typical pastor's wife. So I do work outside of the home. I also work for a development agency. And sometimes I have no idea what's happening in his life. Ay, alis ka na pala bukas. And he has no idea what's happening to my life, that we just need to calibrate, because so many things are happening in silos sa buhay namin.
Thank you so much, Melina. So isang point po is have a time to calibrate, and do not be afraid to share what is in your heart. Even sa mga magulang, if we are vulnerable to our children, mas magiging madaling mag-open up yung mga anak natin sa kanila, and simply listen without judgment, which actually we will talk about later on. Kaya nga, pangalawa, listen, listen, listen. Often we talk and talk and talk, at sabihin natin, may sasabihin ka ba? Puro sermon na narinig ng ating mga anak, so they will feel, bakit pa ako magkasalita? At kung nagsalita ako, I might even get in trouble. So make sure that you listen to your children. Nung naging teenager, yung panganay namin, normally yung teenager, ito yung napapag-practicean talaga ng mga magulang, dahil it's a uncharted territory, the first teenager in your family. So sinabi ko sa kanya, so Misha, if you want to talk to me about anything, just let me know. Tapos may sasabihin ka ba sa akin? No, Dad, I'm okay. Kasi mga teenagers naman, di man makwento yan generally. So another time, sabi ko, Misha, is there anything that you want to tell me? I'm just here. You can talk to me. I will listen to you without judgment. Sabi niya, no, I'm good. So, paulit-ulit yun. My intention is to simply allow her to know na I'm there, available, so that the door is open. She can talk to me anytime. One time I was driving, kasi yung bahay namin, yung ancestral home namin is in Fairview. The most wonderful, the safest road in the Philippines, Commonwealth. No? While I was driving, sabi ni Misha, Dad, can I talk to you? I go, yes, finally yung teenager ko gusto na makipagkwentuhan sa akin. Tapos sabi ko, sure, darling. What do you want to tell me? Sabi niya, there was a guy in school who told me, I love you, Misha. Hala, kinabahan ako. Sabi ko, anong sagot mo? I tried to relax. Hindi pa siya sumasagot kasi pag sinabi niyang I love you too, di sila na yon. Sabi ko, di pa ako sanay na yung anak ko magkakaroon ng boyfriend. I'm not ready for that. So sabi ko, so Misha, what did you say? It was the most painful, the most difficult 10 seconds of my life waiting for her answer na ano kayang sagot nito. Para ba ayoko nang marinig yung sagot. Sabi ko, so Misha, anong sagot mo? Sinabi ko lang, Dad, thank you. I go, ha? Yes, Dad. Ayun lang, thank you lang ako, but nothing more than this. I go, ay, salamat. So I simply listened to her now. So active listening is a communication method that requires each person in a relationship to fully focus on, understand, repeat back what the other partner is saying. Making sure, kasi minsan pag nag-uusap tayo, pag nagkasalita yung ating asawa o yung ating anak, ang ating focus yung sagot natin, yung pangganting sagot, sasagutin ko yon. While it should be, we try to understand where the person is coming from. Ang sabi nila, there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. Yung sympathy, tinabihan mo yung tao. Yung empathy, pinasok mo yung mundo ng tao. So I think that alam nyo sa mga singles na handito, I've talked to so many parents. Kahit merong misunderstanding, ang gusto ng mga magulang, they always want the best for their children. I've talked to parents na nasa kulungan bilang buwan in jail. Ang pangarap nila is always the best for their children. So kung mayroong mga misunderstanding between children and their parents, let me know. I want to let you know, mga anak dyan, nais ng mga magulang nyo yung pinaka-best sa inyo, the highest good. And even sa mag-asawa, para bang hindi nagkakaintindihan, gusto ni Mr. the best for the wife at sa Mrs. the best for the husband. So we just have to listen to each other.
And yeah. So sa third, we have to create a safe space in our families and in your family. So first, we respect boundaries. I know of parents who actually, yung malalaki na yung kids nila, no? Kasi at a certain age, I think it's fine to know the passwords of our kids for their social media, etc. But once they reach like almost adulthood, I think we should respect their boundaries. And this is what I usually tell our parents. Yung parents mo ba, nung teenager ka, alam ang lahat ng buhay mo? Hindi, di ba? Kasi ako nung teenager ako, I think my parents didn't know what was happening in my life. Like I had a home life, I had a home facade, but at the same time, I also had another, you're a teenager, diba? So I believe at a certain point that we have to respect boundaries of our children and also of our spouse. Because when, sabi nga nila, respect breeds respect. So how are they going to respect you if you don't respect them back? And yung na-mention nga ni Herald kanina, number 2 is to be an active listener. And maybe I'm also guilty of this. Paminsan, pag nagsasalita yung husband ko, tapos medyo galit kami at each other, and yes, we do fight. So pag, alam mo, I don't know if the wives here can relate. Yung nagsasalita pa lang siya, nasa mind ko na kung may sasagot ko sa kanya. Alam mo yon, yung may palanggana ako kasi yung for me, alam ko na yung sagot dito. Tapos parang one-liner, tapos tahimik na. Alam mo yon. Pero I have realized na if you really listen to them, then you enter their world, then you can get it and understand them more.
And at the same time, give your spouse, the family member, the benefit of the doubt. Baka naman hindi sumasagot. Baka naman nagpapaliwanag or maybe trying to explain. And sometimes they have a point, but we have to understand. No, siguro napakahalaga, more than being right, mas mahalaga yung having the right relationship. Uulitin ko, no, more than being right sa away-away argument sa bahay, what is more important important is having the right relationship. Tapos be accountable to each other. Talaga, we have to remind each other na darling, mukhang yata medyo naging hard ka sa anak natin o naging impatient ka o baka gutom ka lang naman. Ang lalaki kasi, no, pag gutom at pagod, bad mood yan. Generally, no, hindi naman lahat. Pero ako, pag gutom at pagod, nako, masamang combination yan. So kahit pansit canton, masaya na ako basta may laman yung tiyan ko, nag-improve na yung aking katawan. Even my children would always, Dad, I think you're too hard on one of isa sa mga anak ko. They would check on me and I have given them permission. But at the same time, hindi nawawala dapat yung respect. And finally, is to put God at the center of all relationships. Why? Because we want to be glorified in all areas and facets of life.
Okay, and fourthly, we have to connect before we correct. What do we mean? We were talking about our teenagers. We were talking about, and now we go into parenting, but this is also with husbands and wives. Na sometimes, correct tayo ng correct sa mga kids natin, sa mga husband natin. Pero hindi naman tayo nagko-connect. Parang we don't really know their world before. And the only way that they're going to listen to you is if you are connected with them. Because otherwise, it's going to go up in one ear, out the other ear. So we really have to invest meaningful and positive communication sa kanila, no? And to prevent misunderstandings, because when they feel that we get them, then they're more likely to listen to us. And for example, sa isang party, you don't want them to go there, you don't know the people that are going there, you don't like the friends that are going there. Pero galit ka parang galit na galit ka sa anak mo. And so, pag pinagbawalan mo siya, hindi niya magiget na it's because you care about them. But if they know beforehand that, if you had a good relationship with them, and sometimes, it has to start way before the teenage years. And for spouses naman, you really have, kunyari, your husband is too hard on one of your children, or you think that your husband is going to go into business with someone, and I know a lot of wives here have like this gut feeling, diba, na usually, I don't think you should talk to that person, I don't think that person is trustworthy. And, they're not going to believe you if you're not connected with them. They're just going to think na, ginugulo mo yung buhay ko.
The rule is, whether in marriage or in parenting, or maybe from parents or from children to parents, the rule is 5:1. Okay? 5:1. For every one negative interaction, meaning pinagalitan mo, or may reklamo ka, may concern ka, dapat merong 5 positive interactions. Di ba may kasabihan tayo sa 10 tamang ginawa ko, yung isang mali ko ang nakita mo. And we need to reverse that. That if we want to have a meaningful connection with our lolo, I'm sure may mga different generations in some
Mahirap na daw magpalaki ng magulang ngayon.
So sa anak o sa magulang, always use the 5:1 ratio. Meaning for every one sermon or napagalitan or whatever, there should be 5 positive interactions. And lastly, mahalaga that in our home, it should provide a foretaste of heaven here on earth. Doon sa book na To Be Like Jesus, God would have our families, symbols of the family in heaven. So kung ano ang sa langit, dapat ngayon pa lang nararamdaman na it's a foretaste of divine realities here on earth. If we have unconditional love, meaning I love you in spite of, there's authentic forgiveness. Pag nagpatawad, wala nang recall, wala nang recount of the past or whatever. Parang election, and trusting everything to God. Sabi nila, there are 2 types of prayer. One of which is clinging, Lord, itong gusto ko. The other one is surrendering. And as we mature, and what I've been hearing sa grupo nyo, no, it appears to me na marami na itong matagal na sa faith at nag-grow na at mature na. And sometimes if we have misunderstandings in the family, we have to simply entrust everything to God. Lord, have your way, not my will, but yours be done. Even sa mga relationship ng mga anak doon sa mga magulang. Ang sabi sa Psalm 133 verse 1, how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity.
Amen.
There are things that are good, but not pleasant. Halimbawa, yung exercise, diet, it is good, but not pleasant. May mga pleasant naman, pero hindi good. Halimbawa, yung puro lechon na kakainin mo, no? Pleasant sa taste natin, pero hindi naman good sa health natin kung palagi-lagi. Pero sabi dito, this is in the context na meron nagka-problema between yung disunity in the nation of Israel. Ang sabi sa Psalm 133 verse 1, if there is unity, it is both good and it is pleasant. So if there is unity in the family, it is good and pleasant before the Lord. And we will close with this and ibabalik ko na sa ating MCs para sa ating Q&A. The question is, what one thing can you do so that your marriage, your family will experience better communication? So ito yung ating tanong. And with this, mag-stop share na ako at ibabalik ko na sa ating magagaling na mga MCs para sa
si Miss Ariel,
sa gabing ito.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Pastor Herald and Sister Melie, for that enriching message. I'm sure everyone here has learned a lot for both the couples and the singles. Sobrang relatable in all aspects, no? And now we learned about how unity is very important in the family, especially through our communication. So right now we'll jump into the open forum, and I think everyone here is very excited to talk about to discuss their questions and to allow our speakers to answer your questions. But before we discuss the first question, again, if you have questions, kindly submit it in our Google form. It's at tinyurl.com/pathwayqs. So you have to click the link. I think it's already in the chat box. So those who want to submit questions, click the link sent in our chat box, and then it will be directed to a web browser. And then you please enter your question and click submit so our team can see it. Okay. So Pastor Herald and Sister Melie, we have one question already. So for our first question, the question is, how do we engage our spouse, parents, or children into communicating with us when they are not the communicating type?
Okay. So iba-iba talaga yung mga tao. Iba-iba yung mga dynamics of each family, no? I will always say every family is unique. Every family is different. Every family is special. May mga families na when they communicate, yung parang napakadaling mag-usap. May mga family na pakiramdaman mo na sila on how they will do it. Ibang tao na medyo mataas yung emotions. So how do we actually do it? First is to understand ano ba yung normal na style of communication in the family. So makikiramdam ka, no? Makikiramdam ka. So pag na-feel mo na kung ano ang style of communication in your family, then you can just begin to engage. For example, no, sa mag-asawa, medyo iba ang style ng lalaki sa babae. Normally, marami lalaki ayaw silang sabihan kung anong gagawin. Meron ba dyan mga asawa babae na para ayaw namin na itong gawin mo. Pero usually, ginagawa ng mga misis, no, mga wives. So what do you think, no? To bring the puzzle piece closer. So what do you think? Anong pwede nating gawin? Gusto ng lalaki kasi we want to move fast and do things. And Ang style doon, so what do you think about this? Sa mga babae naman, is usually ang style is, so how do you feel about this? Pakiramdam. Because women, they tend to speak with their own emotions at dapat sabayan mo yon. With your children naman, talking to your children, ano ba ang level ng kanilang understanding o yung relationship? Pag ang anak mo ay bata, your body language is very important. As they say in communication, the words is actually around 7-9%. Yung tone is 38%. Body language around 53%. So more than the words, it's how you show na I'm here. I would like to listen to you. I'm available. What do you want to tell me? And when they are talking, make sure you are actively listening.
Yeah. And siguro I just like to rephrase or add on to the question. Ano? Kasi when you say they're not the communicating type, maybe I want to challenge that. Na maybe they're not speaking your language. In other words, maybe they're not communicating the way that you are used to communicating, but definitely they're communicating in some way. Because I don't know kung not very popular, of course, in 5 love languages, diba? So I'm not sure if this has already been kind of tackled
in the past
in your church. But for example, for Herald and myself, the way that I received love and the way that I communicated is usually through lambing, yung ganto. And pero siya, parang there was a time and na I felt that he didn't love me. Kasi sabi ko, ewan ko kung may wives na nandito, mahal mo ba talaga ako? Kasi parang ewan ko, hindi ko masyado na-feel. Kasi pupunta kami sa SM, sasabihin ko, married na kami noon. Akbayan mo naman ako. So, alam mo yun, yung parang naawa ako sa sarili ko kasi parang ako yung nagmamakaawa, di ba? So, mag-aakbay siya sa akin, ganyan. Tapos alam mo yung parang pilit na parang tuod na parang nandyan lang siya. Tapos, pag may makikita kaming kakilala, biglang mawawala. Oh my gosh. So, parang feeling ko, kinakahiya niya yata ako. Pero, I mean, I guess it's because that's not how he used to receive love in his family before, and he wasn't speaking my language. And this is how he would answer me when I ask him kung mahal ba niya ako. Sabi niya, I always make sure na may gasolina yung kotse. Linilinis ko yung bahay. How else? Parang, di ba mahal na kita? I was so confused. And this was because acts of service pala siya. So parang every time that he would do something for me, he would be loving me na pala. So he was saying that he loved me, but I wasn't receiving it that way. So I didn't get that communication because it's not how I communicated. So siguro, parang my challenge is, if you feel that they're not communicating with you, maybe they're communicating but in some way na you may not see.
Yeah. Siguro dagdag ko rin, no? Even yung silence, bakit siya silent? May sinasabi yon. Yung anak mo, bakit silent yung wife ko? Minsan, yung silence ka, mas maraming sinasabi yung silence kaysa actual words. So, minsan nga, in counseling, no, mayroong iiyak. Kunyari, in my counseling session, may luluha, 1 tear. Sasabihin ko, kung yung luhang yan could speak, ano kaya sinasabi ng luha na yan? Oh, so bigla siya talaga mag-open up. So again, be aware of what is happening. Iba-iba, every family. And by the way pala, Arya, sabi dito, ikaw pala ay member ng varsity
ngayon na namin nakita
ng UP. Okay. So, congratulations.
Baka po fake news.
Okay. So, ayun. I hope nakatulong yung sagot namin, Arya.
Yes, thank you so much, Sister Melie and Pastor Herald. I think our everyone here can relate. Ang daming natatawa na mga naka-open videos na tatapikan pa sa katabi. So, tuloy niyo lang po. You can also interact with everyone through our chat box para naman, di ba, we can feel everybody na participating. And speaking of participation, si Brother Frankie would like to share daw his share his reflection. Would that be okay? Ayan. Can we
Of
call
course.
him to unmute? Ayan.
Yeah. Good evening, Pastor Herald and Sister.
Good evening.
Good evening. I just want to add to what you have said. If any of you are CCFers, I think you will understand what we have talked before about this Motivate series. Have any one of you heard about this Motivate series? Okay, it is an acronym MOTIVATE. M is for modeling. O is for open communication. T is time. V is vision. A is affirmation. T is teaching and training. E is entrust. So I think it is very, very important for us to be, as I said a while ago, be a good model. Because children will learn more than what they see. They see what they see than what we tell them. Yeah? So O is open communication. So we really must have to, as Pastor Herald said, listen, 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 and listen. And we do not, once we talk, once we contradict them, then we cut off the communication, right? So if we have developed this open communication, then we will develop this intimacy, okay? So if we have this intimacy, then the greater the influence, the greater the relationship, the greater will be the influence, right? And as what our sister said, we must know the love languages of each one. Okay, I'm sure you still know what are the 5 languages of love: affirmation, service, touch, gift, and quality time. Okay, so next is V, vision. So if we have vision, it gives us direction. It gives us direction. We become more Christ-centered instead of self-centered. So A is for affirmation. We really have to affirm them, to edify them. Because by affirming them, we encourage them, we motivate them, we inspire them. Okay? So T is for training and teaching. Okay? So we train them, we should be intentional in our training. Then if we train them diligently, they will have transformation. And teach them, we have to teach them to internalize the value, right? Then E, as what Pastor Gerald also said, entrust. We have to entrust everything to God. So that let him take care of everything what we have entrusted to him. I think that's my simple reflection.
Thank you so much, Brother Frankie, for that. Very, very insightful. And may natutunan din tayo from our participants. Thank you so much for that. Moving on also, and to those who want to share, feel free. If you're shy to unmute right now, you can message me so I can call you right later on. So let's proceed with our next question, Bob. So the question is, what do I do if my child kept repeating on talking back in disrespectful manner? How can me and my child understand each other?
Kasi yung age din ng anak natin, no? Of course, case to case yan depending on the age of our children. Napakahalaga kasi that in the family, early on, that we begin to create, ano ba yung mga non-negotiable sa loob ng pamilya? Yung, ano ba yung mga, what are the constitution and bylaws of our family. For example, yung faith, yung putting God at the center of everything. Pangalawa, yung relationship sa magulang at sa magkakapatid, yung hindi sumasagot. But I think early on, we begin to tell them kung ano yung mga dapat na mangyayari. And every opportunity na makorek natin yon, kino-correct natin yon. No? I'm sure some of you kilala nyo si Dr. Hani Karandang of Ateneo and also si Dr. Villasor. Ang sabi nila, the first 12 years is the planting stage. No? And the next 12 years is the forming stage. Meaning, the first 12 years, we teach our children, we plan kung ano yung mga dapat nilang gawin, tinuturo natin sa kanila. And the next 12 years, kung anong naituro natin, dapat fino-form natin doon. So, what do we do? Kasi minsan, because of our business, yung nahayaan natin na sumagot yung ating anak, I think we have to continue to remind them and we have to be patient na kung ano ang tama na dapat nilang behavior o reaction. Because kung hindi natin kinorek early on, mas mahirap makorek. Kasi yung mga ugali ng mga bata, that is actually a learned behavior. So how can we unlearn it? By constantly telling them, reminding them, and at the same time, sabi ko, the 5:1 ratio that we have to give positive interaction sa ating mga anak para kung kailangang makorek, they know na yung correction natin o yung calibration natin is coming from a safe space. So these are just some of the things. And at the same time, baka meron bang issue yung anak natin. Of course, iba-iba talaga. May underlying issue ba yung anak natin na feeling niya hindi siya favorite? Naku, malaking issue rin yun, no? Feeling niya hindi siya favorite. Of course, lahat ng mga magulang naman sasabihin nila, lahat yan, paborito ko yan. Pantay-pantay naman lahat ang aking pagmamahal. Pero minsan, in some families, tanong yung mga anak, sinong favorite ni mommy? Para bang meron silang isang anak na alam na favorite o ni daddy. So dapat fair tayo sa lahat ng ating relationships sa ating mga anak. So is there an underlying issue na tampo o sama ng loob yung bata? Or maybe kailangan lang medyo konting reminders kung ano ang mga non-negotiable in the family?
Yeah, siguro at the same time, the first thing that Herald asked is, ano ba yung age nung anak? Because in our experience lang, I mean, every family is different. Once tumungtong sila ng either preteens or teens, this is the time, starting with, let's say, 12, 13, and this is very, very normal. Parang they really need to distance themselves from their parents and align themselves more with their friends, because this is the only way they can individuate from mama's apron strings and the shadow of the father. So during this time, it's very, very normal for them na mas importante ang friends nila. And there are numerous studies to say this. Their friends are more important at that time than families, than their own family. I remember one time my only boy, si Miggy. So he's now 25, but at that time he was, I think, 13. And ang non-negotiable namin is to go to family reunions when there is, and we're required, no matter, Quezon City kami, nasa Alabang yung reunion, di ba? So one time we said, okay, tomorrow we're going to go to your tita's house. And then sabi nung anak ko, no, I'm not going. So na-shock kami because, I think a lot of parents here will relate na you have a sweet, sweet child na from 0 to 10 has been like a model child. And then suddenly, who is this and what have you done to my son? Yung parang biglang nagrebelde. So nagtingin kami ng husband ko because he would have been our second teenager. And sabi namin, Migs, how old are you? Nga? Tapos sabi niya, oh, I'm 13. Tapos nagtawanan kami ni Herald. Kasi sabi namin, oh my gosh, Migs, congratulations, you're rebelling. So, parang he was just at the right time. And parang if you allow them and if you give them that wiggle room na it's okay for
Without
you
disrespecting.
without disrespecting, it's okay for your friends to be important at this point in time because they really need to establish their identity at this point, at that time in their lives. But at the same time, the non-negotiables are really, really important. That said, dapat yung non-negotiables medyo before 0 to 12 na establish na rin. But it's never too late.
Siguro huling dagdag ko rin sa question na yun, make sure even na medyo challenging yung situation with your son or with your daughter, dapat yung messaging natin is there's nothing that you can do or you can't do for me to love you more. I love you simply because I love you. To create that space na mahal kita dahil mahal kita. So I think nag-iiba ngayon yung dynamics of the relationship.
And siguro, final thing na lang, naalala ko kasi it's actually a very interesting question because I think many of the parents here can relate. And it is in no way to say that you're a bad parent because I would like to tell you right now that you're not. That we all go through something like this. Pero they made a study na, yung first communion ng Catholics, it's done at 7, supposedly because they say that that's the age of reason. And then they realized na siguro pag hindi, maybe that's too young, but they kept it at 7 years old. So siguro ang age of reason ngayon is 13 years old, di ba? Na parang pwede ka na talaga magkasala or may malay na. And then yung juvenile detention system natin is also placed with that in mind na siguro may malay na to. But guess what? When they did an MRI of the brains of people, of when it fully matures yung brain, it's actually much later than we think. It's at 24 to 27. And so, kami ni Herald, when we are guilty of this, pag tinatanong namin sa anak namin, anak, hindi mo ba naisip yan? Guess what? Hindi talaga nila naisip. Okay? hindi talaga nila naisip. For example, sinabi nung isa kong anak, ano ba to? Ma'am, after yung prom, pwede ba mag-after party sa bahay? Sabi ko, anong oras? 10 o'clock. How many people are you bringing? The entire class.
50.
50. So, alam mo yon yung nasa mind ko, anak, hindi mo ba naisip? First of all, isa lang yung yayan yung ngayon. Tapos, 50 people sa bahay. And guess what? Hindi talaga niya naisip. Needless to say, we said no. So, no after party at home. But you have to be patient with them. So, sometimes when we interact with our children, we think that they're little adults. But actually, they're not. Hindi pa fully formed talaga yung brains nila. And so, sometimes, yung anak namin na maski na 20 plus pa, iniisip namin, ilang taon na ngayon, baka hindi pa fully formed yung brains niya. So yun na lang yung yung namin sa sarili namin.
Marami pa gusto sabihin, Ariel, no? Pero let's end there. May mga tanong pa tayo.
Ariel yata. Yeah.
Ariel, sorry.
Ayan. Thank you so much po. Okay, let's proceed. Actually, we have another question. Let's proceed with our next question. As adult singles, what can we do when our parents do not value healthy communication and the children are getting tired of initiating, as if the children are parenting the parents?
Malalim na tanong yan.
I know. Parang malalim yung hugot eh.
Very timely po.
Very timely, no? Sige, ikaw muna, Melie.
Hindi, kasi I'm trying to imagine the scenario where the children probably, I'm imagining the scenario where the child is trying to explain reasonably, pero the parents are the ones that are close-minded to many things. And because I understand this, because I believe during the pandemic and many things, and we were talking about the elections earlier, no, na some people can really be closed-minded about many things, and it's difficult to explain. But I'd like to bring us to the point earlier na it's still mutual respect, na they are still our parents, no matter how hard-headed they may seem, kasi baliktad na ngayon ng mundo na paminsan, Mami, Daddy, bakit ang tigas-tigas ng ulo niyo? Tapos, maybe it's payback. Baka nung tayo bata, matigas yung ulo natin. Pero yung, the first rule is still to respect them and to love them the way that they are. And to know, siguro, and those of you who are married here already know, that the only person that you can change is yourself. You cannot even change your spouse. I tried, believe me. And and I'm sure he has also tried. And we have both failed really, really miserably in this. And if you want to change your parents, the first thing that you have to do is to probably change yourself. The way that you communicate with them, the way that they perceive how you view them. Maybe they think that you don't love them anymore. And maybe just show that you love them first before judging them. Because I know that it's easier said than done, but
Wala na akong idadagdag, no? Maganda sinabi ng misis ko. Baka mabawasan pa yung ganda ng sinabi niya. Happy na ako doon.
Thank you po. Thank you for that answer. Another question then, as an adult child again, how do I respectfully ask for space or set boundaries between me and my parents, especially if I still live with them?
Very hard. But
Well, kasi iba-iba, no? For example, no? In a Chinese Filipino, I have lots of friends sa mga Chinese Filipinos, no? Na very close yung relationship. That is also a gift, no?
yeah.
So siguro before you look at it as a problem, first you look at what is the gift of the closeness in the family. Di ba normally kung merong anak na mag-asawa, magpapadagdag ng panibagong room o magdadagdag a certain space in the house or whatever, first is to look at what is right, no? That yung family, the closeness of the family is actually a gift that you have. But now that you are an adult, you want to create that space. And sometimes, I remember yung professor namin, si Dr. Villasor, she's one of the, she works at some Makati Med, no? Sanabi niya, in order for a boy to become a man, he has to break his mother's heart. So nung habang sinasabi niyan doon sa CFAM in Ateneo, biglang dumaan yung kanyang anak who is also a psychologist. Sabi niya, oh, that's my son. Nag-comment ako during the class. Sabi ko,
has he
broken your heart? Sabi niya, oh, 2 million pieces. No? And sometimes you have to establish your own para bang space to say na, Mom, Dad, no, I'm now an adult and I want to establish this. Ngayon, you do it very slowly. Very, very slowly. Huwag kayong masyadong maging hard, no? Isang kwento na I love to tell stories. No? Merong isang pastor in I think in UK na yung church nila is more than 200 years old na. Yung church, a very old church. And the new pastor, he loves yung praise and worship, yung songs. So gusto niya ilagay yung piano sa gitna ng church, ng stage. Kasi yung for 200 years, lagi nasa left side. Kinausap yung elders ng church, they said, no, we can't do that. For 200 years, yung piano nasa left side. So sabi niya, okay. So ginawa niya, every Sunday, minumove niya ng 1 inch to 2 inches yung piano papunta sa center. So, after 1 year, nasa gitna na yung piano, walang naka-notice. Yung gusto niya rin yung natupad. So, kumbaga, we have to be patient with our parents, with the people around us, because we also need to create that space for ourselves. We need to individuate, because the rule of growth in the family is not to be at home. Para bang you always want to individuate. That's the normal progress of life. So sa mga parents dito na handito, alam ko na mahal natin yung mga anak natin. Make sure that kung time na they want to cut off yung kanilang emotional umbilical cord, no, kay mom at kay dad, that we support that. It can be very, very painful. Pero mahirap kasi kung anak nyo, 40 years old na, magpapaalam, Mami, may nanliligaw po sa akin. Okay lang po ba? 40 years old yung anak mo, nagpapaalam pa kung pwede manligaw sa kanya. So we need to respect yung mga seasons ng ating mga anak.
Siguro I just like to add I think your answer was good. Pero i-add ko lang yung add ko lang yung kwento sa anak namin kasi I'm not sure if the one who asked the question is also millennial. Pero my daughter, my 27-year-old, she's a millennial, and I respect the way that millennials really think super differently. Much more differently than my husband and myself. For example, when she got married in Europe, she wanted it super simple. As in, silang dalawa lang, no guests, court, simple dress, because she wanted to save for her future. And then when my husband and I wanted to fly there, she said, Ma, pwedeng wag na kasi yung parents ni Mark hindi magfa-fly in. So unfair naman kung mag-fly in daw kami. And so, okay, so we respect that. But was it painful, for us to respect that? It was. Kasi of course, this is my first child who's going to get married, diba? Parang, gusto ko sana magpumilit, pero you have to have that mutual respect. But yung aray goes two ways in that sense. So I understand the pain of the parents in this case, and siguro for the adults here, maybe may pinapagdaanan rin yung mga magulang natin. And we also try to understand what they're going through and how they feel they should raise us, maybe even though we don't agree with it.
Thank you so much for that. Moving on to our next question. If I see something not okay with my parents' behavior or decisions, how do I lovingly correct them without feeling offended?
Okay. Tumawag lang yung aming youngest daughter. So sorry about that.
Wala na.
Kasi yung dalawang anak po namin ngayon ay independent na. The youngest and
The second to the
youngest, they live alone somewhere in Ortigas. So we are in Quezon City. So medyo iba po yung aming mas kami. Mas maluwag. Anyways, yung question pakiulit dahil to make
Let
sure...
me repeat po. The question is, if I see something not okay with my parents' behavior or decisions, how do I lovingly correct them without them feeling offended?
Well, the part of the risk that you have to make is for them to feel offended. Kasi kahit na yung pinakamagandang preparation mo, yung timing mo, you have no control how people will react. Ganun talaga. Kahit naman sa anak natin, we have the best intention. You have no control how people will react. So, kumbaga, you have to take the risk una to actually do it. Pangalawa is, I think it is very important and very crucial for us na nasabi natin kayo, nabalikan natin, na nakapagtanim ba tayo ng magandang relationship sa kanila. Kasi kung hindi maganda, nagpatong na may issue nga, nadagdagan pa ng panibagong issue. So they feel that in that relationship, it is not safe. Dapat meron tayong in-invest na positive emotions para ito ay maayos. Number 3 is to say na instead na sabihin na you should do this, para bang it's the language of the mind. Kasi there are two types of communications in the family. One is yung language of the heart and language of the mind. Pag language of the mind, dapat ito gawin nyo, ito yung gawin mo, bawal yan, bawal to. Para bang ito yung solusyon. But language of the heart is, mama, papa, I really, really love you. And para bang yung sandwich style ng communication na I really acknowledge yung concern nyo sa akin. And so kung baka nagtatanim ka, meron lang po akong request, or you can say, I feel na na if you're doing this, it's not good for your health dahil concern ako sa inyo, and end it with something positive. So, positive, request, positive, sandwich approach. Pero make sure that yung space in that relationship, nakapag-invest ka para yung reaction ay maganda. But at the same time, you have to take that risk. Hindi mo alam magiging outcome, but eventually only time will tell. Meron akong quote na sinasabi, love is a four-letter word spelled T-I-M-E, time. Malalaman na magulang mo, mahal talaga ako ng anak ko dahil in spite sa aming miscommunication, handyan pa rin siya, concerned pa rin siya, mahal pa rin ako.
Amen. Okay na.
Okay na daw, sabi ng misis ko.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Very, very nice answer po. Another question is, how do we find a middle ground in generational gap in terms of communication between parents and children?
Siguro, jumping off from what Herald mentioned earlier, because I think it's similar na yung concern kanina was how not to be offensive. There's actually an entire book called The Courage to be Disliked. And sometimes we need to have that courage. I'm not saying now we should be disliked by our parents, but sometimes if moving the piano 2 inches is not enough in some cases, then sometimes we really have to say what's in our heart, but at the same time, do so na we call it an I language. Na, Mom, I feel na parang versus a you language that you're blaming them. I remember one time when I was already married, and then I think Herald was away. I was still also living here in our house, and then I went out for a movie. Then my dad suddenly calls me and says, "Where are you?" Then I said, Pa, I'm out. I'm watching a movie. And then he said, "It's very late. You come back here. You come home." And then I told him, "Pa, I'm married and I have kids." and he said, "Oh, okay." And so he parang, because I'm the youngest, just for context, I'm the youngest kasi. So I think he totally forgot about that. But at the same time, so my dad was in the military, so he was strict in his own way. But there were also times na I would cry to him and say, "Pa, alam mo, I didn't like it when you got mad at me in front of all of my friends. Parang that didn't sit well with me." And at least for that, at that time, he did acknowledge na I'm sorry, and I think for us, the parents who are here, it's also the courage to say sorry to our children. But I believe that in this case, it's the opposite, na tayo yung younger generation, we're finding it hard to find a middle ground with our parents. But what if there's no middle ground? This is the question that I'm going to give back to you. And at the same time, I think if they feel that they're heard, I came across a really interesting article about conversations, he's no longer president, between those that were pro-Trump and those that were anti-Trump. And then it was really about how to create meaningful dialogue between the two. And actually, there was this pro-Trump and anti-Trump that became actual friends, and they just ended up just laughing. Because the pro-Trump would say, I heard this. And these were all of the news sites na totally debunked by the anti-Trump person. And then so she would say na, I heard it on True News or something. And then so the anti-Trump would say, "Oh my gosh, you're listening to that news." But there was an openness dun sa anti-Trump to say na, "But I'd like to know, like, what is it that you really like about this guy? Parang I want to understand na what is it." And so when you open yourself up like that, to someone to find out. For example, you disagree on certain things. I don't know if it's well, politics right now is really also very, very polarized, ano? But I mean, if you just ask, so what was it that you liked about that? We have anti-vaxxers in our family, diba? So why is it? What are you so scared about with this? I want to. Parang I want to understand, and and then you can also explain why you're for it or something. So, and if they feel, kasi paminsan feeling nila siguro, just guessing na mag-explain pa lang sila, meron na tayong panangga. Pero if we really go to them and ask, I really want to know, like, why do you like Lenny, or why do you like Marcos, or I don't know. I don't know, di ba? My social media right now is so full of all of these things, and I did hear.
May dagdag din ako, no? Kasi nagtunan ako ng classmate na Palestinian pastor siya. So alam mo na yung relationship ng mga Palestinians and Jews. So what they would do, they would organize pag weekends, no, yung mga Jews and Palestinians, they would travel sa desert. Magka-camp sila at magkakwentuhan lang sila of their lives and their struggles. Na ang intention, hindi to say you're wrong, I'm right, or vice versa, but to understand, hindi yung sympathize, but to empathize, katulad sa'yo kanina. At sabi nila, they begin to appreciate yung journey at struggle ng bawat isa. Siguro sa family, maybe not a middle ground. Are we investing in meaningful conversations and experience with our children na the art of doing nothing, punta lang tayo in this place, let's just magluto lang tayo, kwentuhan tayo, walang agenda. But the agenda is for us to enjoy the presence of each other. And maybe that will help na unconsciously nagde-develop ng middle ground na this is a safe space, pwede mag-usap tayo habang nagluluto, mga tatay at yung anak nila habang siguro nagbabiking o nagluluto. There can be meaningful conversation that will guide them kung paano pag-usapan yung mga unresolved issues o yung mga issues na hindi pinapag-usapan.
Thank you so much for that. Very interesting po. And I think a lot of us learned a lot from that po. And moving on to our next question. How can I show love naman if my family member and I have very different love language from each other? For example, a family member, yung love language niya is acts of service. And then, for me, words of affirmation. How can we work together?
Interesting question. No? Siguro we can use yung experience namin ni Melie. Talagang hindi ako malambing. As in, pagdating sa lambing, 1 to 10, 0 talaga ako. In our family, wala kaming lambing. Pero kung merong crisis, available kami. Alam mo yung tutulong kami yung kung may problema.
Maski na 3 in the morning na nasisiraan, his brother comes.
Kunyari yung radiator ko sumabog anywhere in Metro Manila. Kuya Odel, sumabog yung radiator. Please help me. Diyan ka lang, papunta na ako. Always, basta ganun. Pero pagdating sa mga birthday party, hindi pupunta yan. Yung kanya-kanya tayong unique na family. So, ito, to make the long answer short, you have to learn the love language of the people that you love. And you can actually learn it. Believe it or not, mas malambing na ako sa misis ko. Yung misis
ako ko na yung nandidiri.
Tapos yung misis ko naman, hindi siya acts of service kasi nung bagong kasal kami, no, ito, I have to say this, yung bagong kasal kami, kasi yung mom ko would serve us. So in-expect ko na pag-isiliban niya ako. First breakfast namin right after the honeymoon. So nagluto siya ng sinangag, itlog, at tapa yata. So after niya magluto, kumuha siya, nalagay sa pinggan ng rice, fried rice, ng egg, ng tapa. I was expecting na ipupush niya yung plate sa akin na, oh Herald, kain ka na. Hindi niya ginawa. So, she ate. Sabi niya, hindi ka ba kakain? Na-hurt ako kasi sanay ako na pinapagsilbihan ako. Sabi ko, baka bumawi ito ng lunchtime. Nagluto siya ng sinigang na pinakulo ng 3 hours. Talagang ang lambot-lambot. So, kumuha siya ng sabaw, naglagay siya Siyempre, nag-pray naman kami. Siyempre, pastor ako, so nag-pray kami bago kumain. So pagkakuha niya, I was expecting na ipupush niya yung bowl sa akin. Hindi, kumuha siya, kumain. Sabi niya, hindi ka kakain. Na-hurt talaga ako. Kasi sa akin, na expression of love is service. So now, pagising ko sa umaga, lagi na akong merong kape, talagang alagang-alaga ako. You have to intentionally learn the love language of the people that you love. Sa mga magulang, dapat siyempre, kung magulang ka, ibababa mo sa anak mo na bata. Kung ang magulang mo medyo mas matanda na talaga, mag-adjust ka rin. So, learn the love language of the people that you love. You can do it. Isang tao na hopeless ako sa lambing, may pag-asa pala. So, don't give up.
Yes, we have to learn the love language of those we love. So we'll have to remember that. Okay, next question po. If I want to keep a good relationship with my 25-year-old daughter, is there something that I can do if I found out that her boyfriend has a child from a past relationship?
So siguro yung context niyan is what I'm hearing is that you're not in favor of the relationship. I think maybe I'll go back to my previous answer. Talk to her and ask her, what is it that you like about him? And you might be surprised with whatever it is that she answers. And parang when you ask this question, don't appear na you're already judging. Parang it has to come from a place that you're really curious about what it is that she really sees in him. Maybe she sees good qualities about her father in the guy, ano. And while the child makes it probably complicated in terms of a relationship, we have to understand that our children, especially if she's 25, they have to sleep in the bed that they make, if you understand what I'm saying. At 25, they're already adults. And they, at that point in time, unfortunately, tayong parents, we are consultants na lang in their lives. hindi na tayo empleyado sa buhay nila. And we, Herald and I, have had many instances where we did not agree with choices of our adult children. And we cried with them. Sinabihan pa kami one time ng anak ko, the one in Germany, na kailangan daw naming dalawa ng counseling. Okay. So, but she said it when she was in tears and she really meant it. And so, I mean, hindi naman kami masyadong na-offend, but I found it funny that she would think that we need counseling. Ano? So parang she was really, really concerned. And I realized that she was coming from a totally different worldview. A worldview that I don't understand even until now. But I just had to respect that. Na she's so different from me. She may be our child, but she has spun off into her own person. And that kind of person that she is right now, I really admire and I really respect. I may not agree with everything that she has been doing, but definitely everything that she's done for herself, parang I don't know how she did that. No, like you know, when she went to when she went to Germany, hindi na yun so humingi ng pera sa amin. She put herself to school. She said, "Wag mo na, I'll take care of my living expenses there." But of course, when nung nagka-crisis sa Germany, during the pandemic, this is the time when during the emergencies, she still came back to mom and dad. Ma, I need money. I need can you give me like 3 months worth of living and I'll pay you back. And of course, we still parented her this way. We still provided for her 3 months living. Tapos, and without telling as anything, she did pay us back. But siguro for the parent here, even if we don't understand them, we have to love them na unconditionally. Na no ifs, no buts. And you want to...
Siguro isang dagdag lang na, siguro yung role natin is not to put the puzzle piece for them doon sa space na yun. Maybe as parents, our role is to bring the puzzle piece closer to the spot. Sila na bahalang maglagay. Nakikita ba nila? Kaya ba nila? Gusto ba nila? And at the end of the day, they have to make that decision as part of the respect. No? And sometimes, kailangan natin lumunok na lang ng mga magulang. Lord, I surrender to you, my son. You know what is best. And sometimes what we ask God for is not necessarily yung sagot ng Panginoon sa atin.
True.
Kasi God is wise. He is all-knowing. He knows what is best. So we just have to surrender to the Lord yung situation ng ating anak o ating mga magulang versus just saying, Lord, itong gusto ko mangyari. Lord, sana hindi matuloy or whatever. But simply, Lord, not my will, but yours be done. And allowing God's sovereignty to take over. So mahirap yon, but we have to trust. Kasi at the end of the day, ang pinakatatay naman nila, hindi naman tayo It's God the Father. And our God the Father loves our children unconditionally.
Thank you po. Okay. One more question. How can we encourage our spouse or children to be more open to us if we are not used to doing this for the longest time of our family history?
Siguro ako muna, before si Manny Pacquiao, ang knockout niya lang yung left hook. Pero trinain siya ni Roach na kaya mag-knockout both left and right. By the way, di ko sinasabi na si Pacquiao yung binoto ko. I'm just using him as an example. Baka mailit pa rin yung eleksyon natin. No? So tinuruan siya ni Roach how to make yung knockout both left and right. Anong ginawa niya? You have to be intentional na talagang maturuan and to learn how to communicate in the family. You have to do it by simply asking, so what do you think? How do you feel? So instead of giving answers, more on asking questions. At kung may sumagot, even if you don't agree, no judgment. So you have to listen kahit hindi ka nag-agree because your intention is not to correct right away, but your intention is to connect. Diba yung isang point natin kina, connect before you correct. Kunyari, yung sense of rightness and wrongness, 1 is to 10, 1, tamang-tama, 10, maling-mali, for example. Sinabi niya, nasa 3 lang. Kayang i-let go. Wag mo nang awayin todo-todo yung anak mo kung very minor, yung disagreement is very minor because your intention is to connect. So kung merong meaningful connection na at kailangan ng mas malalim na usapan, then mas may na-invest ka na. And at the same time, siguro isang tip ko lang for young parents and even older families dito, no? Yung mga anak natin o yung families natin, pag sinabing family meeting, ang alam nila, naku, may problema tayo. Family meeting, may problema, may nagkamali. Kami ng family namin, change namin yung meaning ng family meeting. Ngayon, excited sila sa family meeting. Bakit? Kasi ngayon, let's say we will have a family meeting, pero we have an extra cash tayo. Saan yung gustong pumunta? Sa Ilocos, sa Mindoro, or Cebu. So ngayon, kung may family meeting sila, instead na matakot sila sa family meeting, it becomes excitement. Pero may mga times of family meeting, minsan seryoso naman. So medyo nababalance na because you have provided a foundation na pwede tayo mag-usap. Tapos, we also have every night, mamaya meron kami, we have roses and thorns. Every night we talk. Pag weekends, yung aming panganay na nasa Germany joins us, we talked about
what was rosy
about the day, what is not so thorny about the day. Kasi nag-uusap lang kami at bawal mag-complain. Minsan sinasabi ng bunso ko, my thorn for today is dad, no?
May
So,
kasalanan siya.
may nagawa ako. So, hindi ako mag-complain. So, sorry, dear. So, meaning, they can speak, they can say what is in their hearts. Then after which, I'll just pray for the family and I would bless them. So, kahit nag-aaway-away kami, we always have our roses and thorns. Kami mag-asawa naman, no? Kahit nag-aaway kami, meron kaming rule ng wife ko. Kahit galit na galit ako sa kanya o siya galit-galit sa akin, kahit gusto kong tirisin yung misis ko, minsan naman yan, once every 10 years lang naman yan. Kung gusto niya makipag-holding hands sa akin, kahit in the heat of the argument, bawal akong tumanggi. Okay naman, kung galit siya sa akin, gusto ko makipag-holding hands kahit galit siya, usapan namin, non-negotiable namin, pag nag-offer ako ng kamay, dapat ibigay niya. So, mahirap yata mag-away pag magka-holding hands. So, sa amin, it works. Hindi ko alam para sa inyo. So, we made our own rules in our family to make the relationship better and stronger. You create your own rules and styles. Mag-practice kayo and see what works and ask your children, your family, okay ba to? Do we need to add into it? And who knows, no? We will learn so much from the wealth of experience from this group. Bilib ako sa mga tanong nyo, sumasakit ang ulo ko. Ang gagaling nyo talaga.
Siguro, I just like to briefly add na openness also breeds openness. So if you're wondering why your family members aren't open, maybe parang look at yourself and see, am I also being open and vulnerable to my family members? And siguro, if you start with yourself, sabi nga ni Herald, yung family namin medyo nasanay from when they were kids na we would have a family meeting or kasama na yun sa devotion namin every night na we say what's good and bad. And even if it's about each other, na they can say it there without worry na mapapalo sila or what. But yun, if the more, just be persistent na be vulnerable, be open, and it will also breed openness.
And be intentional.
And intentional.
Ayun lang.
Thank you so much, Pastor Herald and Sister Melie. We have a lot of questions pa gusto po talaga namin itanong pa, but dahil kulang na tayo sa oras, that was our last question. So makakahinga na po kayo. But before we wrap up this portion of the program, I'd like to again take this time to thank Pastor Herald and Sister Melie for their wisdom, no, and insights for us tonight. So for us to show our appreciation to them, can we select an emoji, any emoji of what you're feeling towards our speakers? Ayan, heart reacts, clap reacts, ayan. So thank you again so much for taking the time to be with us. Okay, thank you so much. So before we close,
Pleasure.
thank you so much po. So moving on po, before we close, let us also get to know a little bit more about our Dare ministry and our couples ministry. So again, this event was brought to you by our Dare ministry and couples ministries, as they are both part of our family ministries division. So the Dare Singles Ministry is a community of singles in our church from ages 21 to 39 years old. We have several life groups that meet on different days of the week. If you are still not part of any life group, we welcome you to join one. So if you want to join a life group, kindly contact Sister Willesia at 0917-307-2227. So you may contact her. And the Dare Singles Ministry also organizes table talks every quarter. The next table talk is scheduled on June 25 with the topic on self-care. So very timely and very interesting. So we hope to see you there. And to introduce naman the couples ministry, may I call on Pastor Irene?
Hello, good evening, everyone. If you are a married couple, so you belong to the couples ministry. Please join our After I Do Facebook group page, where you can find articles for marriage and parenting, as well as announcements for future events. Just visit the Facebook group page and ask to join, because this is a private group for security purposes. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. Aside from, okay, sorry, the slide, the previous slide, I'm sorry. Yeah, this one. Okay, so just like their ministry, the couples ministry also has many life groups that meet on different days of the week. So here is a list of our existing life groups. And if you're interested in joining one, please contact Brother Houston or Sister Jack Nang, or Brother Henson or Sister Beverly Ong at their respective mobile numbers shown on the slide. You can just note them down. Okay, thank you. So next slide, please. Okay, so the couples ministry also organizes events with the goals of building stronger marriages and families. We usually organize events for both married couples and also for the families and parents. So we hope to see you all in our future events. That's all, and hope to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie Irene, for that. So again, for our future events, please stay tuned to the Christian Bible Church of the Philippines social media apps. And before we formally end by calling on Elder Ronald for our closing prayer, I would like to announce that the singles will be sent to a breakout group afterwards to share about what we have learned from tonight's webinar and to meet new friends as well. So please don't leave just yet for the singles. However, for the couples, you may continue with your discussion in your own homes. Here are the two questions or two guide questions for the couples for your discussion. So first question is, what can we do to apply James 1:19-21 in our family? To be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Number two is, what can we do to create a safe haven for our family members to openly express their minds and hearts without being judged or scolded? Okay, so you may continue your discussion after our closing prayer. So may I call on Uncle Ronald to close us in prayer.
Okay, let's have a word of prayer. Thank you, Father, for giving us this opportunity to attend this webinar regarding open communication, pathway to unity. Thank you for blessing us with Pastor Herald and Sister Melie Cruz to share with us many insights on how we can improve our relationships through open communication. May each family represented here experience having a safe haven in their homes wherein they can share even their most private thoughts without being judged. May we continue to develop on how to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Help us to be selfless in speech and in our actions, to bring unity in our families. Thank you, Lord Jesus, for this time. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.